Hello and welcome to today's ESHA Genesis R&D webinar. My name is Alicia and I'm joined by my colleague Brian. In previous webinars, we presented introductory topics covering the basic functions of Genesis R&D. For this webinar and the next, we want to focus on some specific tips for success and how to use some of those features in the software to better organize your records, as well as search, filter, and sort your records to help streamline your processes. First, let me give you a little background on ESHA Research. ESHA was established in 1981 and has grown from offering one of the first nutrition and labeling software solutions to a full suite of products and services, including Genesis R&D Foods that we're demonstrating today, Genesis R&D Supplements, the food processor for dietary analysis, and our consulting services that provides labeling services, formula review, and their expertise for customized projects. Genesis R&D Foods was introduced in 1991 to help address the need for convenient formula analysis and formatting of NLEA food labels for U.S. regulations. Over the years, Genesis has remained the go-to standard for product development, recipe analysis, and nutrition facts creation, as well as restaurant menu analysis and reporting. And we offer label modules to prepare compliant labels for the U.S., for Canada, the EU, and Mexico. If you have any questions about your version of the software, your license or account, please contact the ESHA sales team at sales@esha.com. We have a few webinars coming up on the schedule. Continuing with this idea of tips for success, we'll focus the next webinar on ways to search ingredients and recipes using some of the organizational tools in the software and other search methods. And we have a next version of Genesis coming soon. Look for a webinar on the schedule soon where we'll go over the latest enhancements of Genesis version 11.11. You'll find more information about the webinars on the ESHA website in the Events tab, and there you will also find the recordings of all of our previous webinars on a great variety of topics. As always, this webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a link to the recording as well as the slide deck following the webinar. It will also again be posted on the ESHA website, so you can retrieve information or share it with others later. Please note that if you have any questions, send those in right away via the GoToWebinar control panel in the questions section. Don't wait until the end. We do have colleagues standing by to help respond to those. And if we don't happen to get back to you during the webinar, or if your question needs a little more research than the time allows, we'll follow up with you directly. Today, we'll be talking about naming conventions for ingredients and recipes as a way to organize your files, ways to organize and search recipes with the groups and the attributes features in Genesis, and we will cover some Q&A at the end. So to jump into it, one of the basic steps in terms of organizing your ingredients and recipes in Genesis is how you name the foods or ingredients. So regardless of whether you are the only Genesis user at your organization or if you have multiple team members working with the software, you want to use a consistent manner for ingredients and recipes. This ensures that after you've entered these records, you can actually find them. Genesis includes several name-related fields to help you organize your recipes or your records. The name field for your ingredients and recipe records might be best managed if you take an approach of a database style, meaning use consistent structure, terms, and perhaps some coding built into the names to help you track items. You can include reference to suppliers or product lines, as well as versioning of records in the name fields themselves. Just note that the name field does have a 1,000 character limit. Genesis also includes the common name field that can be populated with shorter and friendlier names than the name field. In Genesis, you can elect to display the common name on some screens and some reports. And you can see here some examples of differences in naming styles with the name field where items are more categorized versus the common name field that shows that more simplified name. When working with the names, some considerations or best practices include using ordered elements. So you may, again, want to list the ingredient names from general food type to specific detail, such as the example here, you see latte non-fat vanilla small 12 ounce. You may have various sizes of this type of item. So like latte non-fat vanilla medium 16 ounce or different flavors, latte non-fat caramel small 12 ounce. So using an ordered approach to the names helps you manage these similar items. Upper versus lowercase is entirely up to your preference, but again, you just want to be consistent in your use of those. If you have ingredients or recipes intended for a specific location, a region code in the name might help you recognize this. If you use a numbering system as part of the name, use at least 2 digits to maintain the numeric order. For instance, 01, 02, 03 rather than 1, 2, 3, just to keep numbers in proper order. Some records go through several versions before being finalized, so to help you track the versioning, you can incorporate that into the record names. And for best practice, if you include dates in your names, consider beginning dates with the year format, followed by the month and day or quarter, as you can see here. Some careful considerations or some things to perhaps avoid. If you use abbreviations in names, avoid using non-standard abbreviations or acronyms or initials. Again, whether you are the only user of Genesis or if you have multiple users of Genesis at your company, you all want to be consistent with the codes and the abbreviations that are used so they can be understood clearly. Avoid using special characters in the names of records. This allows you to avoid any unexpected situations, especially like with exporting files to other systems. Not all systems may recognize special characters, or they may have their own ways of handling special characters that you don't know about. So you don't want any surprises when exporting. And again, consistency and clarity are important with the naming of the files, so you don't want to unintentionally create duplicate records due to inconsistent naming practices. I mentioned that there are several fields in Genesis to help you capture necessary naming information. Genesis also includes the user code field and the product and supplier fields that can be populated to help sort and search your records. The user code must be unique for all items, so whether that's ingredients or recipes, each user code must be unique when it's used, but it does provide you with a specific field to enter your coding system. And then the product and supplier fields are included in the software. These are populated already for ESHA database ingredients, so you will see that in use already. We intended the product field to be used as the brand name or a product line for ingredients, and the supplier to be that larger entity, such as the supplier or the manufacturer, or for some of the items that are already in the ESHA database, the source information, like you'll see government database sources referenced in that field. These fields are available on the ingredient level as well as the recipe level. So brand and supplier or product and supplier columns or fields listed for ingredients helps you track the source of the ingredients that you use in your recipes. For the recipe level, you might find a bit of flexibility in the use of the product and supplier fields. So the product field might be populated with your brand lines or the names of your customers or projects. And the supplier might be the company's name, or it could be used again as another level of entering project names, your customer names, or even used for entering dates, versioning, or other information as needed. So using all of these fields in a consistent way will help you keep track of and make sense of your files. In addition to the naming of records, you can also assign ingredients and recipes to groups within Genesis. Groups can be used in a variety of ways, such as categorizing your ingredients and recipes. You can use groups to include or exclude certain records in your searches. You can choose appropriate records to export for sharing files or for publishing data with the groups. So this might be with the export options in Genesis, with the ESHA port utility, or with the Genesis API. You can also use groups to establish access and security levels with the ESHA security utility, where you can designate varying levels of read-write permissions. Genesis includes some existing groups. You can see an example here. We do have database sections, food groups, and ingredient and recipe types. So you'll see characteristics listed like gluten-free, kosher, vegan. Groups are already set up for those types. But you can assign records to one or more, to one group or to multiple groups, and you can add as many new groups to Genesis as you wish. So we populate Genesis with some, but you can add as many as needed and those that suit your purposes. I touched upon a few of the utilities, but I want to talk just a little bit more about these. ESHA port is the import-export utility available for Genesis. You can import or export batches of data using ESHA port. You can select specific fields, label images, and other information that you need to grab from Genesis and pull it out of the software. You can use groups to identify the items that you want to export. So whether that's ingredients or recipes, you can use the groups to export or, again, exclude records from being exported using Genesis and the ESHA port utility. And then the Genesis API is a software development tool that allows you to pull data out of Genesis database into things like your websites, the digital reader boards, label printing deli scales, or other systems. So like ESHA port, you can use groups to select or exclude records from the information that you pull from Genesis. And with the API, you can then publish it to those other systems. ESHA Security is another utility available for Genesis to help you establish and maintain levels of permission and accessibility to files. So with the ESHA Security utility, you can establish roles for the users of Genesis and set levels of permissions, such as no access, or read and read-only access, or read and write access. So using the ESHA security roles and access permissions with groups that you've created in Genesis, this gives you various levels of control and records management. And if you have specific questions or application uses, please feel free to reach out to the ESHA sales team or the tech support team. They can assist you with specific questions, uses, and scenarios. And if you need more information about ESHA port, the API, or ESHA security, get in touch with our sales team at sales@esha.com. So I want to cover just a few use cases for groups. How we might think about them. This is certainly not all-inclusive, so just want to get you thinking about how you might apply the groups to your needs in your organization. One use might be setting up groups for your products that are formulated for specific regions. For instance, you can create a group for each of your U.S. territories and then assign ingredients and recipes appropriately based on the regions that those are needed. Or you could set up groups for personnel in different territories or region. And again, with the ESHA security, this could help you manage the access and the editing of certain records based on groups for various regions. It also helps give the read-only access to those that need to see ingredient or recipe records, but it grants editing permissions only to those that should be able to make changes. Another example of utilizing groups is to help manage workflow. So as a formula moves through stages of development and review, recipes could be assigned to the appropriate groups to help track its progress. So you see here from concept to production, you can move a recipe or ingredients through as needed. And then notice also an archived group in this example to hold inactive records. And again, with that combined with the way to exclude groups, you could exclude archived records from any that are needing to be reviewed currently or that need to be published elsewhere. And yet one more example might be seasonal items. So you can create groups that are for items with limited time offerings. This allows you to easily include or again exclude these groups in searches, exporting, and publishing when it's appropriate to do so. So using groups here can easily allow you to publish data or publish items such as your fall menu in the time that it's needed, and then when your fall season is over, you could unpublish or exclude the group that is for your fall products and remove those from menus or where they don't need to be used. So you can see the great flexibility in creating and using groups, but again, set up those, create those, and organize your files in the ways that work best for your organization. In addition to groups, Genesis has attributes as a way to help categorize the characteristics of ingredients and recipes. Working with attributes is a way to help track ingredients and recipes that meet or don't meet a specific characteristic that might be used for regulations or specific definitions, claims, or other requirements. Attributes might often need accompanying documentation, such as the case with bioengineered or organic certification. When you assign an attribute to an ingredient, that indication pulls forward to the recipes that the ingredient is used in. And the attributes feature includes a spot to attach the necessary documentation for your records. And as you can see here in this example, the attributes can be displayed in Genesis with the View Label screen. So you can bring in the attribute name itself or accompanying logos or images that are attached with that specific attribute. In Genesis, you will see symbols that indicate the status of the attribute. So the green check mark means that yes, the attribute applies. A red slash circle means that the attribute does not apply, and question marks indicate that the attribute status is unknown. Attributes in Genesis follow one of two rules. Either all items in the food must have the attribute, or at least one item in the food must have the attribute. So an example of the first rule might be free of artificial color. For such a case, all of the ingredients in the recipe would need to indicate the free of artificial color attribute in order for that attribute to be true at the recipe level. On the other hand, Genesis includes a bioengineered attribute. It's already in there. And the bioengineered attribute follows the second rule where at least one item has the attribute. So if one of your ingredients indicates the green check mark for the bioengineered attribute, then your recipe will show the bioengineered attribute with the green check mark. And just note here that you can manually select or reverse the attribute that pulls through to the recipe. For instance, if a recipe indicates bioengineered because of the ingredient or of an ingredient that it includes with the green check mark, but an exemption applies to the bioengineered rule and to that recipe, you can manually change the attribute indication as needed. It may be that you want to utilize both the groups and the attributes for some of your records. Genesis already includes groups, like I mentioned, for gluten-free, organic, vegan, kosher, and a few others. And note that these are generically included. And you can certainly use those and assign ingredients and recipes to the existing groups in Genesis. But remember that attributes might be used to track and document certifications. So you may also wish to create and use attributes for things like gluten-free by US definition. So you may want to create a specific attribute for gluten-free US or USDA organic versus an organic attribute or Canadian organic attribute or certified vegan items. So again, create any attributes that make sense for what you need to track. And again, there's flexibility in the way that you can use the attributes like groups. There's flexibility in the way to manage the information about your records. And again, create those and use those that work best for your organization. So at this point in time, I'm going to hand it over to Brian, and he will show you some of these ideas in Genesis.
Hi. So the first thing I'm going to cover is how to create and modify your groups and attributes. So if I go into database and I go into modify, you can see I have my attributes here. So I can go in. Right now I've got bioengineered, kosher, and vegan in. If I want to add a new one, I just simply click new. I put in what the attribute I want to add in, and then the rules. So it's all items or one item. Same with groups. I can go into groups, and as you can see, I've got them in here. If I want to add a new group in, I'll just put new, choose the type of group or subfolder that I wanted to put in. And in this case, I will add in dairy-free cheese. And that will just become a group for me within there. So now you can see it's appeared right here. So this is really where you can create all of this information at and make it easy on yourself. If I go into another area here, so if I open up an ingredient, so I've got a strawberry flavor here that I'm opening up. You can see I basically followed the system that was mentioned earlier. I've got my numerical date here, and it's backwards so that it will show in chronological order. So I've got 2021, 0915. Then my major subgroup, which is flavor, the secondary subgroup, which is strawberry, and then I've got my supplier in here, Acme, and then this would be their item number. So this would be an R&D item that we're bringing in from them. In my common name, I just have strawberry flavor. I can put in a user code, and user codes are useful when you're transitioning to a live product and you want to put in the old number as well. Or let's say you're switching to an ERP system and you have an old item number or old SKU number in there, you can put that in there as well. So you could actually have it under name and username under two items. My product is my brand. So in this case, it's just a generic Salem Town brand yogurt. That's the item that I use it in. And my supplier is Acme Flavors. Before I go into attributes, I do want to show you the attachment area. You can attach documents in here, and this is a really handy thing when you're bringing in R&D ingredients because the documents rarely show up at the same time. So rather than it be on someone's desk or in their email or in the box of samples that you've got, you can kind of download them here and use this as a repository for that. In the attributes section, these are the preloaded ones I had. Then I can attach the documents to this. So in bioengineered, I've got my NGP statement here, and I'm saying that this is not bioengineered. My kosher, I would have my kosher document, check it off here. Same with organic. Vegan's a little different because you can have a vegan product without certification. You know, you may want to make that judgment call and not put a document in, or you may be supplied something from the supplier that tells you that. So you can go either way. Again, in my groups, so here I have my departments and my development tracking. So what I can do is I can check this item off as being a research item. I want them to see that. I'm using this in 3 different plants so that the 3 plants can see it. It's at the concept stage. If I moved it into R&D now, I would just uncheck that and it would be under an R&D item. And then you can also see that I put it under flavors here. So you can really use your workflow to determine how your groups are going to match up with with what you're actually doing and transition it through the process as you go along. Okay, so I'm just going to save this ingredient now. Okay, and if I go into, I'm going to open up a recipe here. So I have a recipe. Let's see. So if I open up my strawberry yogurt, let's see where you at. If I go to edit recipe, my basic information, it's the same, it's very similar, except now I'm using a live number. So what I've put in is Acme's actual SKU number, my category, which is yogurt, strawberry, the brand, and then the size. And in this case, it's a version 2. So we've moved on from version 1, now I'm versioning to 2. Got my serving size, my common name is strawberry yogurt, my product. And in this case, I didn't use a supplier, but I could, if I was only making it one plant, I could put that plant in as a supplier. If I look at my attributes, there's nothing in here right now. It's giving me question marks because I don't actually have any ingredients in here. So I'm going to close this out or click OK. And then I'm going to add that strawberry flavor in. And I'll put in 1 pound. Now you can see that it is showing my attributes on my developing screen. So it's telling me it's not bioengineered, it is kosher, it is organic, and it is vegan. The other thing this can be used for is if you are missing documents and you just see the question marks there, you know that you need to go back and take a look at what you require from your vendor for that. You can also see at the top here, I've got attributes for kosher, organic, and vegan, and my other information as well. To search ingredient by group, I would go to Open, Ingredient, and then down at the Advanced Search button, you can see at the bottom here, I've got Search by Groups. I can include all of the groups or include any of the groups when I pick those categories. First one I'm going to do is fairly general, so I'm going to pick baking ingredients, click OK, and search. You can see that it's going to give me a lot of ingredients here. The top, the dark green, are my own ingredients. The bottom are coming from our database. If I want to make a more specific request, I could go to Home, Open, Ingredient, and again, I'm back to the advanced search. Now I can select from my own ingredients. So the first thing I want to take a look at is my plant. I want to see items that are used in Portland. So I click OK, search, and you can see that 3 different items are used there. You can go back to the advanced search and refine this a little bit more. So I'll go select. Now I want to look at the R&D items that are used in Portland. I'll click that, click OK, search, and you can see that that narrowed it down to just 1 item. This can be important if you want to see items that are in development and live use or in research within your plant. You can also look at different regions with it, so you can get very specific or very broad in your search. It's a great way to generate lists of items that you're bringing in that are in development. Now, with the security, part of the reason that the groups is useful is for 2 different reasons. One, you have information security between your plants. So you may only produce a product at one plant and you don't want your entire system seeing that recipe. The other one, though, is that you could have different suppliers. So you may have a sugar supplier on the East Coast that is, let's say, cane juice, which means that, it's going to be vegan. Whereas on the West Coast, you might be using beet sugar, which means that it's not going to be vegan because of the bone char. So you would have 2 different sugars there, and you don't want your R&D departments getting the wrong one. So it could be used just for the same ingredient, but from different suppliers as well. So that helps out with that. That's really the main functions here. I'm going to turn this back over to Alicia and let her finish up.
All right, thank you, Brian. All right, Brian, can you see the slideshow again?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. So as always, in addition to the webinars that we present, we want to tell you about the training for Genesis R&D. This offers more formal instruction on the software and dives much deeper into working with the software features, as well as discussions on label formatting, the regulations, specific scenarios, and working through a very great step-by-step example with the software from start of the formula to finishing of a label. We offer 2-day professional and 1-day advanced level courses, and we also combine these in a 3-day class option. So you see all of that information presented here. The typical training or the professional level covers the fundamentals of using Genesis R&D, as well as FDA label creation and the regulations, and the advanced day builds upon the features and topics covered in the professional class. If you have already attended the 2-day professional class, you can choose to attend the advanced day as a single day option. We have upcoming online and in-person trainings scheduled next week, and in November, in-person classes will take place at the ESHA Oak Brook Training Center. And the full training schedule, as well as registration and other details, are available on the ESHA website. So go ahead and check out that page, as well as contact the training team if you have any questions about the offerings or the current arrangements. And if your organization needs to schedule a group training for your company's needs, please contact training@esha.com. And you can stay in touch with ESHA in a variety of ways. If you need to get in touch with our sales, support, or consulting teams, please reach out. You can see phone and email contacts here. We also invite you to join us on the ESHA LinkedIn community, and you can find additional resources and subscribe to our blog and newsletter on the ESHA website. So please check those out. So with that, we'll head into some Q&A. Brian, I'll go ahead and take the first one, and I'll tie in one of the questions that came in about the allergens. So the first question, can I edit the names of my ingredients? So a couple considerations here. One is you can edit the names of the ingredients that you've added to your software. So any ingredients that you've entered in as an ingredient record in your Genesis, you can make any changes to. So you can change the names, change the nutrient data, the gram weight, any of those fields, the fields that we talked about in the naming, you can edit any of those as much as you like. On the other hand, if you are using any of the ESHA database items, these are the items that ship with Genesis. When you receive your software, there's quite a large collection of ingredients included in the software. So those ESHA database items, you cannot edit the names of those. Those are set because next time we would offer an update to the software, we would overwrite any changes if you could make them. So to get around, if you're using an ESHA database item and you need to make changes to the name or any of the fields, you can open that ingredient record, select Save As, and assign a slightly different name. That will make a copy of that ingredient record, and then you can change the name field and any of the other fields, the nutrient data fields. Now with the ESHA database items, there are some fields that you can edit. So for an ESHA database item, you can add a common name. You can add the user code. You cannot change the supplier and product fields. Those are set. And you can change ingredient statement names or populate the ingredient statement names, as well as select the proper allergens. And we covered working with the ingredient statements and covered working with allergens in previous webinars, so you may want to check those out. Just note that when you try and make changes to an ESHA database ingredient, you may see a pop-up screen. And that was one of the questions that came in about the allergens. They go to change the allergens and you see a pop-up screen. For some fields like the allergens ingredient statement fields, you can ignore that pop-up screen. It's just telling you, hey, know that you can't change all of the ingredient fields for an ingredient record. You can disregard that when working with the allergens. Go ahead and mark the correct allergens and save that record. And the allergens and common name, user code, those type of fields will populate for you. So short question, long answer, but work with what Genesis offers there. The next question for you, Brian, if I create a group, can others see that?
Generally, you can see the names of the groups created by others that share your license. It can depend on the groups to exclude section. With ESHA security, the permissions will dictate access to certain groups. For instance, you'll be able to see the group names, just not what's in them if you don't have access to them.
Okay, great. And then our last question that we'll have for today, can I delete groups and what happens to records that I've assigned to those groups?
You can delete groups. If you delete a group, this will not delete the ingredients or the recipe assigned to that group. It just deletes the group itself.
Wonderful. Thanks for that tip as well. And thank you everyone for attending. That's all that we have time for today. But again, you can find all recordings on the ESHA website. We will send out a recording of this webinar and the slide deck later, most likely today or tomorrow. And thank you for attending and have a great day.